Alright. Alright, this is a little rough. First time through with the Roundtable. I am James Curtis, a.k.a. Pork Chop Express, iHeart Sequels head writer and host. And we're doing our first ever Roundtable, something I've been talking about doing for quite some time. We're going to be talking about all the Aliens movies, with the exception of maybe of the Aliens versus Predators, because I don't know if you guys want to even talk about it.
I feel like it should be part of it.
And my man here hasn't seen Prometheus yet, so I'm not sure if that's going to be part of this either, but I'd really love to talk about what Fox has marketed as the Alien Quadrilogy, which quadrilogy is it's like a made-up marketing term. There's no such thing as a quadrilogy. It's either a tetralogy or a quartet.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, but there's 5 of them anyway. Not even including Alien and Predator.
Right.
No, there's only 4.
There's 5. Prometheus.
Prometheus, but like I said, I don't know if you can count Prometheus, because they're trying to avoid even calling it like an alien movie at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're already starting in on digressions. Again, I'm James Curtis. To my left is John Atzberger, local singer-songwriter, goes under the name Olentangy John.
Yeah.
And you have a new album out.
I do, coming out Saturday, actually.
But the iTunes is already up and running.
Yep.
So, what's the name of the new record?
The album's called Doggerel, which is a term for bad poetry.
Which is that what your record is?
Yeah.
Bad poetry. All right, so there you go. So, and it'll be available. How are you guys selling it physically?
Cassettes and CDs.
And you're only doing it through a web store, or are you guys doing it?
Trailerfire.com is the record label, and we've been working with them for a while, and so it'll be on there.
Okay. And is that like regular distribution stuff too, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So, and then further to my left over here is local artist Argee Geronca. And Argee, what do you got going on? Anything at all?
Oh, I'm just. Oh, well, I got 2 jobs and I do community service. So I'm pretty busy with everything.
Right. Well, you were actually you working at? There's a local barcade here in LA.
Yeah, it's called the Blipsy Barcade. It's in Koreatown. It's all 80s arcade games and a bar, and it's fun.
You guys have Alien vs. Predator?
No, that's
new.
Or any of the Alien stuff?
No, I don't remember any Alien video games.
I thought they had Aliens, like Alien. Maybe I'm just thinking of Alien vs. Predator. I can't remember, but I thought there was an Aliens game. I can remember going up to an arcade in Pismo Beach.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the sequel.
It had to have been, because this would have been about 1990.
Like when she's in a suit, maybe?
Yeah. It was like 4 aliens. It was a side-scroller. Yeah, I remember that. Because I went up, this sounds so stupid, total digression, but I went to Pismo Beach on vacation, and I went and saw the movie Dick Tracy for like the 2nd time. And then later on, we wound up at some arcade near the shoreline, and I remember playing Aliens.
Yeah, I think that might be that might be a 90s game.
Okay, so your stuff is more geared towards straight
maybe
up
we'll get
80s
Xenophobe
stuff.
Or something. That's probably
Yeah.
As Aliens we'll get.
It's total knockoff. I remember the old the NES box always sitting on the shelf for rent or for sale, and it just looked exactly like the Xenomorph from the Alien movies. So we're all taping this during our lunch hour. We all actually work together, so that's why they're grubbing. I haven't started grubbing yet, because if I shove food in my mouth while I'm doing this, it's going to sound a hell of a lot worse. But I figured it's free form. There's really no way to get into this other than just all right. So, do you remember your first experience with an Alien movie?
Yeah, I remember seeing the first one as a pretty young kid. I was probably 10 or so.
Right. On
home video, and mostly not having any understanding of what it was really about, except that the world was interesting and that dude's chest broke open. And actually, and I had a confusion. I think is it Spaceballs where they aped that scene?
Yeah.
And it's the same actor. If you watch Spaceballs, it's John Hurt.
Yeah.
Doing that same gag.
And I had them confused for a long time as a kid, and I was like, wait, so the alien pops out and it doesn't sing in this one?
Yeah. That's the problem with spoofs. If you see the spoof first and you go back.
Yeah.
I recently showed my girlfriend A Few Good Men, and I was waiting for her to start laughing at the "I can't handle the truth" or "You can't handle the truth" line. But that was totally out of her frame of reference. Thankfully time had passed enough where that wasn't so much of the cultural lexicon. But I was waiting because she was so intense, so intently into the movie. I thought that line was going to take her completely out of it. How many times that joke has been made and shit. But thankfully everything was all good. So your first experience was Alien.
Yeah, and then...
but a hodgepodge of that and Spaceballs.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've seen them all a few times now, but for the first couple, I had a really hard time differentiating between the two because I would see bits and pieces.
Right.
And So they kind of had, even from an early part, they existed in sort of a world more than a particular narrative structure to each one of them. It was kind of like...
The two being what? The first two Aliens?
Yeah. Yeah, like Alien and Aliens. And then...
Because so 10 years old would have been about what for you? 94
or 5?
So it was right after the third one came out, but you probably hadn't seen much of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I remember watching the third one and starting to be like, okay, I've missed something in the other ones. And since then, I've gone back and
started working it out, retrofitting it essentially.
Yeah.
Right on. What about you?
Aliens was actually the first one I saw.
Mine too.
The sequel, and then went and saw the first one maybe a couple years after that. And I just remember it being just moving a lot slower because the first one is. I mean, the second one is just.
It's war.
It's action packed.
It's a war movie.
You know, there's a bunch of soldiers, a bunch of all types of weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Sigourney's in that suit, you know, and the first one is really just more it's a thriller, and it's like
Your first experience was on home video. Did you see Aliens in the theater?
I saw Aliens on home video.
You saw it on home video
Right when it came out. Yeah.
Did you guys have those parents? Well, I know you did, but did you have those parents that would take you guys to R-rated movies and shit?
We had a family friend, and a good friend of mine actually, still to this day. But his mom would go. We would say we wanted to see this, an R-rated movie, and she would go the week before and check it out and see if it was okay for us.
Right, the typical parental guidance way it should be done, as opposed to just dragging your kid into the R-rated movie you want to see because you don't have a babysitter.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw action films. R-rated action films were fine.
Uh-huh.
That was like a family outing. Porky's is obviously a different story.
It's kind of uncomfortable too, because Porky's probably like you're sitting there with a heart on next to your family members. It's a little weird.
That's how they get you.
I think I saw bits and pieces. I think I saw bits and pieces of Alien on home video. In fact, this will tell you kind of how old I was and maybe how like on the cusp of technological advances my grandfather was. But my grandfather actually had a video disc. Do you guys remember? Did you ever see video disc?
Yeah.
No, not the laser disc. This predates laser disc. It looks like a big floppy disc with like an image of a movie on it, and you load it in like a big cartridge.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was short-lived, man. This was like the Betamax of disc technology. No kidding, but he had a couple of those, and I can remember seeing that, but not seeing that movie, but seeing bits and pieces of it. My experience was, my grandmother was like a big sci-fi nut, but not so much film. She was always more of a book person. It's like her favorite writers were like Isaac Asimov and
H.P. Lovecraft, or
no, more like Edgar Rice Burroughs. She liked the old pulpy novelists, but then she liked some Heinlein. She didn't like Bradbury. I was more the Bradbury fan, but so she liked science fiction in her reading, and then that kind of like she had the same inclination with film. So she liked the first Alien movie, and then when I would have been 7 years old when when Aliens came out. In the theater. She took me to see Aliens in the theater when I was like 7 years old.
Wow.
So I saw it first. Yeah, exactly. I saw it first run. Hadn't seen the first film, but I saw the first run of the theatrical release of Aliens. Loved the hell out of it, and then worked backwards, and then saw Alien. And I actually, when I was like 13 years old, I looked like this when I was 13 years old. I wasn't as thin and not as gray, but I was 6 feet and like woolly. You know what I mean?
Right.
So 13 years old, I can get into an R-rated movie. I was the guy who was buying smokes for people and taking them to the theater and R-rated movies, or buying tickets for kids that wanted to get into R-rated movies. And 92 was when Alien 3 came out, and I went and saw Alien 3 by myself.
Have you seen the director's cut?
Of Alien 3 or Aliens?
Alien 3.
I haven't. I know it's out there. I know it's part of the big Blu-ray box sets and the quadrilogy set, but I never saw it. I saw and own James Cameron's director's cut of Aliens with like the additional 20-some minutes, and I hate that director's cut.
It's really not. It pulls all that speed you were talking about out of it, and
yeah, because they put in like one of the biggest problems with that movie. A lot of people really like it that I've talked to, but I don't. Is they put in all the additional footage of the colonists on LV-426 at the beginning of the movie, so you see these people beforehand, and it's just like it totally takes you out of it.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is that's kind of the opposite of what's so enticing about the first one, particularly. It's a really lonely movie, and you're not really sure.
Right.
I mean, it's all about being alone on a spaceship and what to be afraid of.
It's a haunted house movie, as opposed to the second one, which
is
Cameron is basically doing like a Vietnam film.
Yeah.
in the second.
Well, you also know like Sigourney's the girl now after the second one.
Right, exactly. That you can still. I just talked about this recently. You can go back and watch the first Alien, and the way that thing is set up, you could still watch it and be shocked that Sigourney's going to survive.
Yeah.
You have no idea she's going to be the one at the end. You think it's going to be Tom Skerritt,
right,
or somebody else. You know, you don't expect that, or there's no telegraphing who the final survivor is going to be at all. And I think, but by the time you get to Aliens, it's all like her story.
Yeah, it's her story. Yeah.
Yeah. My main problem with Aliens is like everything had to be over-explained in the director's cut. So not only there's the stuff with the colonists, but there's a whole scene where they talk about how Ripley had a daughter that died, and you know, in the director's cut, and that just kind of it just winds up overanalyzing why she even like connects with Newt. Because what I loved about Aliens, the theatrical cut, is she's just motherly.
Yeah.
You know, she finds this little girl. She's not a military person. She's not a company person.
Right.
She's still a regular working class woman. And so when she discovers Newt, she wants to mother her. It's supposed to be like a natural instinct, but the director's cut goes out of its way to explain.
She had a daughter.
Yeah, it's like a surrogate daughter for somebody.
Right.
I hate that. I really hated that.
Yeah, and I do like the way that plays up. Like, part of the whole thing is the very matriarchal fighting between the Queen and...
Yeah, it's two mothers.
Yeah.
It's two mothers at the end of the film.
And that's kind of the cycle of almost all of them since the first one. Is like, it's a lot to do with genetics and
right.
You know, humanity versus...
And reproduction and nature, you know, different aspects of nature.
And, you know, you haven't seen Prometheus, but it has a lot to do with that kind of interplay as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I always thought that was really interesting about them. And in the same way that the first one is kind of slow, it does a good job of playing with the psychology of it in a way that's not action-packed, and then you don't really get to see the alien very often.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, yeah, it just builds in a psychological way. It makes it not an action story.
Yeah, I like that about actually the first one. It's totally, you know, it's a thriller.
Yeah.
Psychological thriller, and it, you know.
It's a slow burn.
It starts changing once he gave it up to James Cameron, and then even more when he gave it up to Fincher. And
Fincher tried to pull it back a little bit more. And that's what I liked about Alien 3 is that he tries to pull it back, just like Cameron tried to create a universe that expanded on what it could do. Fincher did the same thing, but also took it back to this very isolated, like, they created this mythology of, like, you know, intergalactic monks that had started this brotherhood outside, like inside of a prison colony.
Yeah, there's that part of it, like, you know,
no weapons allowed and no women allowed, and so there's this constant friction between Sigourney or Ripley and all the men, and then there's also the fact that once the alien finally is unleashed, there's no real way to fight the damn thing, except for the environment that they've created and stuff like that, or that they're set in.
Well, part of that also plays into the whole sexuality thing again, though, because all those guys are, like, reformed rapists, I think.
Yeah, no, there was a couple of them that were. They were supposed to be the worst of the worst.
Even the good guy, like the leader of men, I forget his character's name, but...
I kind of get frustrated with Sigourney in that movie, I mean, Ripley in that movie, because she could have done so much to help him out. Like, she hides a lot of this stuff, you know? And
it is kind of
weird.
That
was weird. Like, why is that? Why is she not telling him what's going on?
Yeah. You think after all this stuff that's happened to her...
Yeah, they crash landed, and, like, you know, they should...
And they saved her.
It's the future. Aliens do exist.
Yeah. Well, she's even though she's saved by them, she is met with a lot of acrimony. You know what I mean? It's not exactly the most jovial situation for her to be in.
Right.
And honestly, after everything that's happened, you could see that character being so much more cynical. Like, you know, look at what happened at the beginning of part 2. She tells everybody in the company what happened. You're going to go back there and everything's going to get fucked. Yeah. You guys don't know what you're dealing with. She gets fucked over by Paul Reiser's character. So for her to be thrown into this situation where already she knows that there's no standing for her whatsoever because it's all a patriarchal, if that.
Right,
it's all, you know, a completely male-driven society. She probably has no way of trusting that these people are going to understand the truth of what happened or what's going to happen too. But yeah, there is. It's after the whole. What's one of the weirder scenes in Alien 3 is when she fucks the doctor. She fucks the guy who's treated her, and then he dies almost immediately, which is so weird. But it almost, that's one of the only scenes that feels kind of reductionist, kind of like a little something out of a slasher movie. It's like, Ripley finally got some, and then somebody has to die.
This guy's going to help you out.
And then
we're going to rip his head off.
It is a shock when it does happen, but it also just feels like, really? But after that, she does, up until a certain point, kind of become this cowering mess.
Right.
It's just kind of weird.
One of my favorite things is that they all do pretty well. Prometheus sort of backed away from it, but they all do a really good job of grounding all of this technology in some sort of functional reality. So, like, there's not just magic buttons and shit that, like, does stuff. And they're always in, like, some industrial part of the ship that, like, they're not supposed to be in, but makes sense that it exists. Like, and the use of the forklift machine thing, I forget the name of that, but the thing at the end of the
the power lifter thing. Yeah.
I'm like, that's totally a practical thing, and it's kind of cool to have it juxtaposed and make sense in that world.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's funny because they all have these. Every one of the films has sort of this working class reality to all the characters too. These are all kind of feel like, and you're not going to get this now because everything kind of tends to skew young and hip. But you know, these movies are populated with cast members who are all in their 30s and 40s. You know, the first one, they're basically they're mining people coming back. The second one, it's all the soldiers. The third one, it's like, it's a prison, so you got the fact that they're all hardened criminals, but it also takes place in a refinery. So, the world itself, a lot of that comes from what Ridley and James Cameron did in those first two films, but building up this could be almost anywhere kind of mentality. It really feels like this is where science is going.
Right.
You know, this is where corporations and manufacturing are going to be heading in the future when they move off of our planet.
They don't work for NASA or something.
It doesn't seem so exactly. It doesn't seem fanciful. It seems very grounded in a working class, working man ethos. Yeah. So until you get to the fourth one, which is where things get really ridiculous. And have you seen the fourth one? When was the Alien Resurrection? With the clone Ripley?
Yeah. That was like, okay, she's dead. Now what?
Right. Well, here's the thing. Go ahead.
I remember when they announced that movie and we were like, so what's this going to be like?
Well, it's right there in the title, too. Resurrection.
Yeah, I guess.
They're bringing back Ripley.
Yeah.
I thought they were just going to have the whole third one. It was only a dream.
Yeah, I didn't
know that was
Gordon was going to be in
more.
it. And when I found out she was going to be in it, like, what?
Yeah.
But that was also around the time when, like, cloning was really big as a current event.
Right. Right.
And that one, too, has so much to do with, like, the reproductive genetics element.
I actually want to see, like, when the U.S. Army actually finally does capture this alien and, like, controls it.
And they're like, woo, finally, we've spent all these trillions of dollars.
Because I know they are.
Right, that's what all those movies are about.
Eventually the U.S. Army is going to get a hold of this alien and control it, you know?
Well, it's not the Army, it's like the corporation. Which is Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
We're led to believe that they have taken over a governmental role.
Yeah, it's like RoboCop, where the whole future's been privatized. Yeah. So it's like armies, which is where we're heading right now with everything. But like the Army privatized the whole thing, and the thing that always cracked me up is I have a lot of history with like reading about the productions of these things. In fact, I remember when Alien 3 first came out, there was a teaser trailer that hinted that the alien was finally going to make it to Earth.
Right.
Which thankfully, up until the Alien vs. Predators films, never happened.
Yeah.
Because I always hated that idea. It's one of those weird fanboy conundrums where everybody I ever always talked to wanted to see the aliens go to Earth, and I'm just like, why? Earth is so boring. There's so many different movies with aliens that come to Earth. Yeah. For years there's been that. I like that it kept it in space.
Yeah, and they didn't actually ever show Earth in any of those up until Alien vs. Predator.
There's a scene at the end of Alien Resurrection where they kind of break through the atmosphere to Earth at the end of the film, but
there's no like.
There's almost a feeling like it's over and done with, which should have happened with Alien 3 and didn't.
Right.
But it's weird because I was really happy with Alien 3. I didn't think they had to go to Earth. I didn't care that they killed off. Spoiler alert for motherfuckers out there who haven't seen these yet. I didn't care that they killed off Ripley. I felt like, and maybe this is me being raised Catholic, I kind of liked the self-sacrifice and the martyr themes.
Right. Well, and it made perfect sense. Like in the third one of these 3 horrible stories that
she's eventually got to get a break.
She's like, fuck. Like, they're going to kill me. That's what I'm hearing. I'm a guinea pig, and I'm eventually going to die.
Yeah, eventually. And then this way, at least I have some kind of control over how I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'll take these fuckers with me to hell, essentially. Yeah. That's what happens. And I like that.
And it's not even really that grand. It's like, it's just for a corporation, you know? It's not like she...
Right.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they can control this alien.
But for what? Like, I don't... the question is still...
Really, I mean, they're still going to look at this
It's just
alien.
malevolent. Right. Yeah, it's just malevolent. That's all it is. It's just because. But I thought that it was a joke that they were going to do Alien Resurrection anyway, so I had no wish to see that necessarily. But I had friends and a lot of fanboy types I knew who hated Alien 3, wanted to see another one, and they actually referred to Alien Resurrection as Alien the Apology. Meaning, like, oh, we're sorry what happened in part 3. Here's part 4. And to those people, I was like, are you happy that you got this fucking movie? This pile of crap. Now, the interesting thing, though, is there's some really...
action in that movie, actually.
It's fun.
There's fun action, and there's some stuff that's giddily, like, macabre and kind of stupid. Like, where he's touching his... Well, there's the guy who, like, the Dan Hedaya character, when he gets punctured by the thing, he actually reaches in and pulls out, like, a piece of his brain before he dies.
I don't remember that.
And then you've got this... It's so stupid, though. It's kind of like taking the alien stuff and putting it into this fanciful comic book world that the other ones didn't feel a part of.
Yeah.
But there's really talented people involved in part 4, which a lot of people didn't know about at the time, and kind of after the fact, you feel just Winona Ryder, but behind the camera, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the guy who had previously he'd made Delicatessen and City of Lost Children. Alien Resurrection was his first Hollywood film, and then after what happened to him in Hollywood, he's like, I'm never coming back. The next movie he makes is Amelie. He gets his credibility back, and he just keeps working in France. He drops his partner, Caro, that made the first 2 films with him. But he keeps working. And then the story is, the script is credited to Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon wrote the Alien Resurrection.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so what's most interesting about that is you can see him, if you're a fan of the show, if you've ever seen the show, you can see him sort of shaping the notion of space pirates that he would later use in that show Firefly, and then the film Serenity. But it's such a bad movie. It's such a bad movie.
Part of it, to me, is the design of it. Is like, it has such a clear focus, and like hiring H.R. Geiger to do the alien creature design and the world, and like all that is so particular and interesting and fascinating. By the 4th one, you end up getting into like that humanoid one that's like much more just like
the
sci-fi bad guy thing, and like it doesn't have those design elements that are like shocking and horribly fascinating. And
I think there's something very grotesque about that creation that really works in its favor, but it's not interesting at all. They don't do anything really interesting with the humanoid alien hybrid kind of thing at all. I could tell you my favorite things in Alien Resurrection, I could count them all. It's Ron Perlman's character is really fucking funny. The scene where Ripley walks into the room and sees all the failed clones is awesome. That's a great scene. And then they later spoofed it, I think, on South Park, which was really funny. And then that's about it. There's one scene in particular that to me is like the total nadir of that whole film. It's the one where they introduce Ripley playing basketball. Do you guys remember this?
Holy crap.
No, so this is the way they set up how amazingly badass this newly cloned Ripley is, because she's got half alien, she's got a little bit of alien blood in her, so it makes her almost superhuman. But there's a scene where she schools like Ron Perlman and these space pirates who wander into this gym, which I thought was hilarious, that 300 years after everything is said and done and people are still playing basketball, it didn't seem the most creative thing that they could have done. But
you think of all the room it takes on a spacecraft to have a basketball.
Yeah, and it looks like an old school court and everything too.
There's hardwood floors.
And she like schools these guys, and then there's this classic scene where she's walking away from the net, walking towards the camera, and she does the pitch over her shoulder, and she lands it. And apparently they did that take like 50 times because it was done in camera. Wow. So Sigourney actually got one behind the back as she's walking away towards the camera. They did like, I don't know how many takes. But to that I go, so what? Because it's so fucking stupid, the scene that you finally wind up with. It's like a lot of work for little reward.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alien Resurrection is I find Alien Resurrection to be the one that has the least amount of apologists.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of fans who are crazy about that fourth film whatsoever.
Yeah.
So. I think, the whole series has been dancing around those two, the first one and the second one.
Yeah.
And they're both good. But
everybody they're kind of agrees that those are good.
Sure, but those are also the antithesis of each other, really. Like, the one is a psychological thriller. It's slow and it's creepy. The second one is action-packed and scary. And
it's a proper sequel to the first one.
Yeah.
Really.
It is a proper sequel.
But,
and, the third one is a proper sequel to the second one. But it does something different.
Yeah.
It does something remarkably different.
But it just kind of throws her... It's back to just Ripley by herself again, in the beginning.
Right.
Which at some point you're like, okay, how shitty is this chick's life?
Yeah, seriously.
Well, that was another thing I remember people being pissed about when Alien 3 came out, is that at the end of Aliens, she has herself, the little girl, and Michael Bihn's character,
Hicks.
And then what's left over of the cyborg Bishop, the Lance Henriksen character. And they all go into hypersleep and take off. And in part 3... everybody's dead except for Ripley, and the cyborg is she eventually resurrects him.
It's like, oh, there was a crash, and then there was a leak or something.
Everybody's dead.
So you're alive. Everybody's dead.
The little girl that you've been trying to save that last movie, everybody's dead.
Which, I hate to say it does suck, especially if you were such a big fan of the second film.
I know.
But it sets the tone for the third one and how bleak. And again, there's
it's just a little convenient, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
A little
It is. But there's almost like you get to the end of the third one, you go, what else could they have done? She can't stop the corporation, but she can kill off the alien.
She does get really dark in that third one. She's just like...
everybody's being exploited.
I just need you to open her up. I need you to incinerate their body.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, dude, what's wrong with you? You love this girl.
But she's like, she just doesn't want to have that nightmare relive.
Is it Alien and Predator that sets up the construct that the Predators made the aliens for hunting?
I don't know if it's made. I can't remember. They harvest them. They use them as for fun, for hunting. Yeah, they train with those things in different parts of the galaxy. And one of those things is set up in a pyramid under the ice in Antarctica.
Like a cigarette.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you ever see the Alien vs. Predators movies, which I'm not saying you should, but they're really ridiculous. They pull out all the stops and they go straight to how ridiculous those comic book
characters. Well, they go for the
are.
action, there's aliens exploding all over the place, and that's part of the whole thing.
Well, the second Alien vs. Predator is even funnier because the way the first Alien vs. Predator ends is the Predator ship is taking off. And one of the Predators has been infected by the alien. So, of course, you get this alien-predator hybrid thing that causes the ship to crash somewhere into America, but I don't think you see it at the end of Alien vs. Predator. Mm-hmm. But when Alien vs. Predator 2 comes up, they've, crash-landed in some small town in Colorado.
This is a modern day?
This is a modern day. This takes place,
Like current?
Current, not future. Not future, because Alien vs. Predator didn't take place in the future. It takes place in our current. There's hints that the way the Weyland-Yutani Corporation even found out about the aliens and the Predators is what happens with this dig in Antarctica after they find the pyramid. So that's where it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But the first one is moronic and it's not very well made. The second one is super moronic, but they push the limits of the R rating. Mm-hmm. So it's really quite fascinating. Because again, you've got the Predators have been alerted to the fact that their ship crashed and they've got to go in and wipe out the aliens. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be friendly to the locals. So you've got Predators and aliens and U.S. citizens, of course, well-armed U.S. citizens because it's in a mountain town in Colorado. Like the cheerleaders running around with a pump shotgun trying to kill these things. And it's so ridiculous. Yeah, it's classically ridiculous.
It's bizarre how something as small as the first movie that's heady like that could transmute into...
Yeah. Oh, easily.
It's funny.
And a lot of that, though, you know what? It's funny because fanboys are the ones who bitch about these things, but they're the ones who want it first.
Yeah.
Which is what cracks me up. They're the guys who go and start creating Alien versus Predator comic books, which then become the video game, which then become a film series. Right. And it's like, we want this, but then when you finally see it, it's just like, what were you expecting? What were you honestly expecting? You know what I mean? It's like that saying, it's like a photocopy of a photocopy of, like, by the time you get down to that last photocopy, like, the quality is shot to shit. Right. And that's what happens. Like, I'm a big fan of sequels, but, like, these hybridized things that happen where they want to have two things fighting and...
Jason
versus Freddy, is like a perfect example of that. It's a mess. But anyway, so... And the Predator films start out... They're not exactly... The first Predator film wasn't exactly brainy, but it's smart. It's smart the way it's constructed. It's really well thought out.
If nothing else, the character design of the Predator is next level because there's so many details to it.
Yeah, well, just the idea too, like that there's supposed to be this. There's a society of hunters out there on another planet. That's all they want to do is hunt, and it kind of speaks to our desires as human beings to go out and almost like colonize, but go out and see. It's like as soon as we find a new place, what are we going to do? We're going to kill whatever's there. So you got this alien that goes around hunting for different species, and of course it stumbles onto this amazingly badass ragtag. They're not Green Berets. I can't remember who they are.
They're mercenaries, I think.
They're mercenaries, but they're tied. They're real military.
Are they?
Yeah, they're real military. But
kill me now!
Kill me now! Get to the chopper! Which is great. And then the second one is one of my favorite. Do you remember? Did you see the second Predator
in L.A.
with Danny Glover in L.A.?
I saw the second Predator at this really bad movie theater in Panorama City.
Oh, really?
For the first 20 minutes, you get like the top half at the bottom.
It's like the frame's off.
Yeah, frame's off. And they finally adjust it right. And we're watching the movie, and it's like the last 10 minutes is left, like when he follows the alien into the spaceship. And then all the aliens come out. And so he throws the knife down. He's like, all right, what's up? And right there, the movie cuts.
Oh, you didn't even see the end of the damn thing?
And like we were waiting there for like maybe 5-15 minutes, and then some guy comes out like, yeah, sorry.
The reel broke.
Like, yeah, it broke, but if you want, you can sit here and watch the next one. And we're like, dude, I didn't even want to watch that one. I'm not going to sit here for another hour and a half to finish the movie.
Predator 2 is actually where, I think it might have came up as a joke before, but Predator 2 is where the Alien versus Predator thing comes up. Because at the end of Predator 2, Danny Glover goes on to the ship, right?
Yeah.
And he's fighting the alien and the Predator, and he beats his ass. And then the other ones show up, and they, begrudgingly, they're like, you won the battle, okay, fine. But if you look, there's like a trophy wall in the Predator ship, and there's an alien head there. Like the exoskeleton, not the exoskeleton, but
the long...
Yeah, whatever, the endoskeleton. And it's there. And that was one of those things where it's like, it's supposed to be this ha-ha funny, like, Easter egg moment. Like, isn't that cool? This might take place in the same universe. But then somebody took it too goddamn far, and now we have Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And I like how Prometheus is trying to make up for those mistakes.
Yeah, Prometheus is trying to scale it back down a little bit.
And it's supposed to be this intellectual exercise.
I think he needs to let that go. I mean...
What? The more
Ridley Scott needs to let it go. I think someone else should have... I felt like someone else should have taken that job. Like Christopher Nolan or something. Or just another... Because I feel like that's what happens. Like, some director takes over. He becomes like this billion-dollar director eventually.
Right, but that's the thing. Like, how many... This came up recently in a conversation. How many directors can successfully go back to where they started from? And that's what you get with Ridley Scott doing Prometheus. It's kind of like... George Lucas is like a good example of that, but there's better ones. But it's kind of like, this isn't a successful example of it. You got a guy like Sam Raimi who started out making horror movies, and then he makes like Spider-Man, campy horror movies. But then he has this major success with Spider-Man, and he has some Oscar cred too because of that movie A Simple Plan, and he's like an A-list director. And then he goes and he makes Drag Me to Hell, which have you guys seen Drag Me to Hell? You guys should. It's amazing. It's actually really great. But it's one of the few times I can think of a director going back successfully.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a rare thing, and I think that with Ridley,
I think he can
he wants to do a fucking Blade Runner sequel now, too.
He could still do science fiction. I just don't think he needs... I think he just needs to leave Alien alone.
Well, Ridley's not the kind of guy I want to see doing sequels and prequels, either. So... But I'm not a fanboy.
I'm also not a big fan of Ridley. I haven't been a big fan of Ridley Scott since, I don't know,
Black Rain. Yeah, you're like the only other guy I know who ever brings up Black Rain.
I thought Gladiator was crap.
I thought Gladiator was crap. Gladiator was Black Hawk Down is kind of good, but it's not great. It's kind of good. It's a well-made film.
I just pictured seeing it from a Somalian perspective, just for a half second.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh god, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Politics aside, though, it's a well-crafted film.
Sure.
There's not a lot of bumps in the road. You know, it's not like when you watch. Gladiator was one of those films. Like, I'm shocked that it won Best Picture.
Yeah,
completely shocked that it won Best Picture.
It's about as formulaic as it could possibly be.
He's made some good movies after he made that movie Matchstick Men with Nicolas Cage, I thought American Gangster was again kind of good,
it was
not
okay.
amazing, better than Gladiator.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, Ridley Scott, it's like Alien, Blade Runner, Legend. And then Black Rain, and even Blade Runner and Legend, those are two films that have director's cuts that I don't really care for.
Uh-huh.
You know, so when he finally went back and retooled those films, I was like, well, thanks, Ridley, you fucked those up.
Yeah.
Which I guess I'm the asshole in the minority on that one, but I don't care for the director's cuts, especially the ultimate recent director's cut of Blade Runner, where I just felt like everything was being explained.
Right.
And then I didn't like the longer version with the new score for Legend. So, but whatever. I think that's a problem that we all have as far as like what's going on with films now. Everything has to be explained. Everything is a prequel. Everything has to be the how and the why.
A really, really, really annoying moment in Prometheus where that happens, where like it's not a big spoiler.
Not a big spoiler.
Like,
I'm sure.
But there's this one character and he's off the ship in this place looking for this thing, and he's got a video feed linked back to the ship on his helmet or something.
Right.
And the woman's watching him, and he turns it off. He just turns it off so she can't see what he's about to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it cuts back to her in the ship, and she's watching. You watch the feed go off, and you're like, okay, I get it. And she goes, "You son of a bitch! You had to turn off your video feed." And you're like, why the fuck is that an essential moment to explain to me what just happened? And it's full of just like back steps.
Well, there's again, I'm not going to give too much away with Prometheus, but there's this thing that happens in Prometheus where they first wander into the pyramid or temple, whatever the hell it's supposed to be, and you're getting like 3D security footage.
Yeah.
And you're like, why do you need that? Why is that got to spell it out? Why can't you just stumble?
Cool in 3D, man.
It looks stupid, is what it is. It's dumb. There's no logic behind it whatsoever.
Yeah, there's not like a practical reason.
Did you guys see it in 3D?
No, I saw it at the drive-in.
That's right. You went to Vineland.
Yeah.
I love Vineland Drive-In. I go there all the time. I saw it. Where the hell did I see it? I think I just saw it in a theater in Pico Rivera. I did not pay for 3D. I'm real picky about 3D. Like, I can count on one hand the 3D movies I've seen that weren't like coming at you 3D. Like, when I want to see 3D, I'm old-fashioned. Like, I want to see Jackass 3D or My Bloody Valentine 3D. I want to see shit and blood and things like that flying at the screen. I'm not buying into this world of immersion thing that Peter Jackson and James Cameron are pushing so hard for. But like I thought the best 3D I've seen like that though was Tintin, the Spielberg movie. It was so great, and I thought Scorsese did a good job with the 3D in Hugo. But yeah, I'm not a big 3D guy. Yeah. Like everybody wanted to know if I was going to go see Avengers in 3D. I was like, no, I didn't really care.
Right.
What about you? Are you doing the 3D thing a lot?
Most movies that come out in 3D, I don't really have
care about.
In seeing, yeah. But I mean, the one I did see, like, it didn't really matter if it was in 3D.
Which one?
Avatar.
Yeah, Avatar I saw in 3D.
Yeah.
But I saw Avatar.
It was really like, okay, let's check out this new technology. That's the only reason why I went to go see it.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought the movie was gonna be crap, and it was.
Yeah, it pretty much was. But visually, again, it was great.
Like, it was cool.
It was kind of it was. I failed into Avatar. Like we were gonna go see something else at the ArcLight, but a friend of ours showed up late, so we wound up going. We're like, well, Avatar's playing. We haven't seen it, and it's playing in the Dome in 3D.
Right.
Let's go see it. And that's how we saw it. And one time only. Yeah. I'm not going to make the same mistake with Avatar that I made with Titanic, where I actually saw Titanic a second time. And I was like, yeah, I was right. This is pretty fucking awful. I know a lot of people do like Titanic. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I never
and it's not about a chick flick or anything like that. It was just so poorly written, and it's such a slog to get through.
Pretty mechanical.
Very mechanical.
Yeah.
But But anyway, so back to the... But yeah, I mean, Cameron, and a lot of these guys, what you're getting with these director's cuts and what you're getting with like a lot of narratives now is people having to over-explain everything. Yeah. And I find that very boring. Like, to me, it's an insult to the audience's intelligence.
Well, it's a fine line to walk, like, particularly with sci-fi, to walk, like, this is how this world operates, and feeling like you want people to be able to understand it enough to enjoy it, but also leave it mysterious enough to be enthralling, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a fine line. And the first Alien does a really good job, and I think the second one does a pretty good job of leaving that alone.
Yeah.
Not the director's cut.
Yeah.
But as they progress, and that's also the same thing with, like, ending up with strange side sequels and stuff like that, it's because they start over-defining the world.
Yeah. Which, for some people really like that, but I've never been, like, I'm not one of those guys who reads a lot of fantasy books that go on for, like, 30 volumes.
Yeah. Right.
I just feel like I like narratives that are self-contained. It's one thing, it's one story, one shot told, and then maybe you'll get some sequels or something like that, but I guess that's one of the reasons I'm not much of a television guy either.
I mean, even as a fan, like, yeah, I want to know what's going on in that world, but that's because I'm not told what it is, and that's what makes it maintain interest.
Right.
Well, with a lot of, like, director's cut, I think it's like the director just tired of answering the same question, like, what really happened in this movie, you know?
Right.
So, like, instead of, you know, probably the original ending was kind of just mysterious, and you don't really know, you might think that's what happened, and he just clearly, like, draws the line, like, okay, this is exactly what happened.
So stop asking.
What is that?
So stop asking, okay?
Yeah.
If you thought that's what happened, then you were right.
Yeah, I guess, and maybe that's what it is, but that's still, like, to me, that's not the director's responsibility to fill in the holes for everybody.
Right, but he obviously did record it, and he filmed it.
Yeah.
So he had the intention of putting it in there.
Right.
Someone else, one of his editors, was like, maybe you should take that out and just make it more mysterious at the end.
Yeah. Or just take it out for time. How many deleted scenes have you seen on a DVD where you go, yeah, fine, I guess that would have been okay, but it really, like, it's redundant. You gotta take it out for time's sake.
Right.
It might slow the movie down.
Right.
So.
And that's like the Aliens. I've always, even as a kid, I thought it moved extremely quickly. I used to think it was a really short movie. And
it's 2.5 hours long almost.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's a long-ass movie.
It was super short. And probably just because it's structured really well, because it, like, keeps your interest and it moves along at a pace that makes sense. And so that's a testament to its functionality, I guess, at least.
Yeah. But, well, there's something about the economy of editing. Or, sorry, I'm trying to say that the right way, but editing should be about economy. Story structure should be about economy in a lot of ways. There should be propulsion. In a lot of films like that, I'm not saying like a Coen Brothers movie needs propulsion like that. It's a different narrative design.
Clearly, you've never read Chekhov.
Yeah. But I'm saying when you're dealing with genre pictures, like there should be a propulsion to the narrative, and then any ideas you can squeeze in there, great. You know what I mean? Any character stuff you can get because of the people you put on camera. Like, I think that helps Aliens as much as it helped Alien. The first film is the cast is fucking great. Yeah. There's like nobody in Aliens that is bad at all. Everybody's just spot on. It might be annoying, but that's kind of the character, like Bill Paxton's character. He's supposed to be kind of an annoying whiner, but it's awesome. You know what I mean?
And the other thing that does is it gives you investment in these characters, so it's not just a slaughter fest of everyone. Like, you're invested in these people enough to be like, oh no, that guy's dying. Holy crap. And it's funny because it's a simple horror movie structure, but like with the sci-fi veil, you lose track of that fact, and it becomes this thing that is scary but is not just a horror movie. So it's fun that way.
Yeah. I'm full of pizza.
Me too.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you guys are welcome. So this is the first ever iHeart Sequels Roundtable. We're going to be doing more of these. We're going to try... I know Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, just came out Tuesday. Because this is post-4th of July, so we're all still kind of waking up after the 4th of July holiday anyways. But I want to get together with some people and talk about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, and I want to talk about all the Batman movies that have been released theatrically before Dark Knight Rises, so expect more of these.
And Toy Story, right?
Well, I will talk about Toy Story maybe, because you know they're going to do a fourth one.
I'm sure they are.
They're going to do a fourth one. What's more discouraging is, I think after the success of Kung Fu Panda 2, like Jeffrey Katzenberg came out and announced like Kung Fu Panda 3 through 6.
Oh my god.
That's just too much. That's just putting the cart before the horse, man.
Yeah.
That's too much. But we will talk about a lot more of these, and I will say if you are interested, we didn't talk about it very much here, because even though these guys might be nerds about some things, they're not full-blown film nerds. You guys have a life outside of films. There is some really interesting stuff going on with the production history of the Aliens films, especially after the second one, because the part 3 was the one where not only did they want to bring it to Earth, but there was a lot of talk about not using the Ripley character, and there's some really interesting production history about these films, the development of these films, and they were going to take Ripley out for 3 and 4, but then bring her back for part 5, and they were going to have it take place on Earth, but then they were going to have it take place on some kind of like terraformed biodome, and it's so there's a really great book. I think his name's David Hughes. It's a book called The Greatest Sci-Fi Sequels Never Made. Not sci-fi sequels. The Greatest Sci-Fi Movies Never Made by David Hughes. And it's a book about... Some of these movies eventually got made, but it'll tell you the failed productions of when James Cameron tried to do Spider-Man, when Terry Gilliam tried to do Watchmen, when Alejandro Jodorowsky tried to do Dune before David Lynch. So it'll tell you all about that, but it'll also tell you about all the failed attempts at Star Trek sequels, and it does get into all of the horrible production history of what happened when they tried to make Alien 3 and then Alien Resurrection and all that stuff. So that's definitely a book worth checking out. There's a book called Shock Value by Jason Zinnemann that writes about all the amazing people who were making horror films in the 70s, and there's fascinating chapters on Dan O'Bannon and what he went through to get the first Alien made after he had his initial successes with John Carpenter, so you should check that book out. And then, this is all stuff I got sitting back at my desk. I was going to bring it in and show the covers and shit and be like, check these out, but now I got to do it off the top of my head. And then the other thing is there's a really great magazine called Horror Hound. It's like Fangoria or one of those things, but they recently did an issue all about the Alien movies. What's great, though, is they find all of the Alien merchandise and tie-in stuff and all that. Like the very first Alien toy that was made, I think by Kenner, the same people who made Star Wars, they made an Alien toy after the very first film in 1979.
I remember my friend had Ripley in the Power Loader.
The Power Loader, yeah.
I was jealous of that one.
Yeah, that's so. This issue is amazing because they've got pretty much a condensed backstory on all the Alien films up to the Alien versus Predators, and then it's got pictures of every piece of ancillary merchandise and tie-in nonsense and ephemera that you could ever imagine sprawled off in full color. So Horror Hound, it was the last issue, so it would have been, I think, the May-June issue. So check that out, you guys. Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Argee. Try to have you guys... Well, you're moving to New York, so we're not going to have you in probably... Well, when are you leaving?
A week from Saturday.
Wow.
Might be able to squeeze you into a Batman one if you want to do the Batman one.
We try. I haven't seen him in a while. I'd have to brush up. But.
Yeah. Have you seen you saw all the Schumachers and all the Nolans and all that stuff?
Actually, no, I haven't seen all the Nolans.
No?
No.
You didn't see Batman Begins, or you didn't see?
I saw Batman Begins.
You haven't seen Dark Knight?
No.
You're the one guy.
I know.
You've seen Dark Knight.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a really good sequel.
You gotta get around to it. But yeah, so maybe we'll have you back in for Batman before you leave. Try to get you in on some more of these if you want. I don't know if you're a Batman fan or not, if you've got a preference.
I can talk about Batman.
Alright, that sounds good. So we will be doing more of these. There will be some coming in the future. I am James Curtis, the Pork Chop Express for High Heart Sequels. See you next time.